Hey, Rise and Thrivers, have you ever achieved more and more on the outside while quietly feeling like you're running out of energy on the inside? Today's guest knows exactly what that feels like. Tosan built an extraordinary baking business in Nigeria, including a commercial bakery producing 27,000 loaves of bread every single day with more than 200 employees. But success came at a cost. As the pressure increased, the craft he loved became buried under targets, responsibility, and constant demands of leadership. And what Tosan discovered is something I think every leader needs to hear. Slowing down doesn't necessarily mean it's the enemy of performance. Sometimes that's the thing that makes sustainable performance possible. Before we get into that conversation, if you've been feeling stuck, overloaded, or caught in your own head, I've also created my Mindset Meditation Reset for Positive Change. It's an 11-minute guided meditation plus my Next Brave Step worksheet. And for a limited time, it's just $1. Yes, $1. Go to johnmerkus.com/reset. That's johnmerkus.com/reset. Now let's get into it and meet Tosan. Today's guest knows what it means to build something from scratch. First line. All right, here we go. Hey, Rise and Thrivers. Today's guest knows what it means to build something from scratch, quite literally. He began his journey as a baker and went on to create one of Nigeria's most prominent baking businesses. What started from nothing grew into a luxury brand serving some of the nation's most influential people. Alongside that, he built a commercial bakery producing, Rise and Thrivers, get this, 27,000 loaves of bread every day, not a month, not a year, every day, and employing more than 200 people. From the outside, that looked like an extraordinary success story. But behind the scenes, the pressure of growth, responsibility, and constant performance was taking its toll. The craft he once loved became clouded by productivity, scaling, and the demands of being a CEO. He eventually discovered that success without sustainability can burn the baker. That experience led from building baking businesses to helping leaders build themselves, their teams, and their organisations in a more sustainable way. He's now based in Australia. He's a restorative leadership coach, awesome speaker, and founder of Let's Bake It. We're going to unpack all of that, or bake all of that. Through his Rewire code, has a distinctive, do that bit again. Through his Rewire code and his distinctive baking metaphors, he helps leaders reflect, resolve, and reconnect so they can slow down, regain clarity, and lead without running themselves and their people into the ground. He's also the author of a brand new book called Your Team Needs You, Slow Down, Mix Well, and Lead Better, featuring a foreword from Buddy Valastro. He's the guy also known around the world as the Cake Boss. Please welcome to Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness, Tosan Jemide.
Thank you, John, for that wonderful introduction. At some point, I'm like, this is long. This is not about me, is it?
It's all you, mate. I know some people say that too. When they hear it back from someone else, they think,
Yeah.
oh, wow, that sounds quite good. And so it should be, mate, because you've had an extraordinary life, and this is exactly the kind of person that we love to have on the show. So why don't we start with how your baking journey began?
Ooh, that's taking me back many years. Oh, how did I start baking? Baking, for me, I always say baking found me. I didn't find it. It was never something I intended to pick up as a career. I grew up in a baking home. My mother used to bake a lot of wedding cakes and celebration cakes. She had a day job, and she would literally go to work and come back and jump into her work at home. I was the only one at that time who used to help her sort of prep up, get things ready, get the mix, get all the ingredients together, get the baking pans and everything. And that was my job, literally. And as an apprentice, I never really baked. I just helped. And then when I was 13, we lost mom. And 4 years later, when I turned 17, my eldest brother was getting married. That was like the first wedding in the house. And he was like, there's no way he's going to pay for a wedding cake. You know, a lot of cakes left our house for free. And it was like our home was the hub for cakes. So he just couldn't put it around his brain how he was going to exchange money for a cake. And he said to me, look, if anybody's going to have the slightest clue on how to bake a cake, it will be you. So I'm going to give up everything that I have and trust you to bake my wedding cake. However it turns out, I will accept it. I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing that. Then he says, no way, no problem. I won't get a cake then. So I kind of felt really pressured, and I obliged. Went back into baking lab, got all my mom's recipe books and all her stuff out, and I just basically started practicing, and eventually baked the wedding cake. It came out relatively impressive for a first timer, and that was it. From there on, it was just, learn as I go, pick up one thing or the other, develop my skills formally, and that was it. That was how I got into baking.
Wow, that's wonderful. So learning from your mother and then kind of carrying that through. I get there's a bit of pressure from your brother there to do the cake, but that, talk about sliding doors, that led you down this whole journey of then
Absolutely.
Eventually having that commercial bakery. You've got to tell us about the 27,000 loaves a day.
My brain literally burns out when I start talking about it. But it was like intense work. I had two businesses that were two ends of the spectrum. I had a bespoke cake line where I made like top of the range cakes. They needed a lot of detailing, signature kind of work that needed my 100% attention. I needed to be in flow. I needed to be able to execute the work to the last detail. And then I had another line of business that ran 24/7, commercial, but the bakery never stopped. It was shift in, shift out, shift in, shift out.
Yeah, right.
And, we ran a day shift, we ran night shift, and day shift had targets, night shift had targets. And then by morning, we were sort of putting all the loaves together, getting ready to deliver. And there was bread in Nigeria is a staple.
Yeah.
So, and it's primarily a morning good. So everyone wants to get their product in the morning. Yep. So it's like major pressure to meet that demand. Every morning you had to work through all the hours from morning into night to make sure that you're ready to deliver all your products by the next morning. And, it was 24 hours for me. So sometimes I'm getting calls at night. This machine's broken down. There's a problem in the factory, this or that. And it was intense. And then I still had the other spectrum that required me to deliver state-of-the-art cakes where I had to always be in flow. So it was a lot of demand on my body, my mind, and, emotionally, it was draining.
Yeah. Wow. So you had that kind of almost creative outlet, and where you had to really be in the zone or in the flow, as you say, to create those wonderful, wonderful cakes. By the way, everyone, I've had Tosan's chocolate cake, and it looked amazing, but it tasted even better. And everyone else that tasted it was just blown away as well. So You obviously know your craft, and I can vouch for that. And then you've got this almost production line thing that's really taking your energy and your sleep away and things like that. So,
Correct.
is that what ended up being the catalyst for having things not go so well for you, even
Yeah.
though on the
Yeah.
outside it looked like you're a successful businessman and creator? And then that led you to learning some things that you wanted to share with other people. So take us through that process and how that worked
Well,
for you.
I actually started off with a craft. My
Yes.
my business primarily growing, starting up, kicking off as a young person was just cakes. And as I grew leaps and bounds, it was a thriving business. But I started to realize it wasn't scalable because everything revolved around me as a creative person. And people came to me for the work that I produced. And even when I tried to sort of delegate, it never spoke about my work. And people would immediately tell me, you didn't finish that cake, that wasn't your work. So it was a problem for me at some point. I started saying, I need to slow down with this and look for something else that would sort of be more scalable and, without having to go far out of my area of specialization. I thought, okay, a commercial bakery, bread is like it's hot gold. Everyone eats bread, and good bread. Then so I started off, and it was a runway success, huge success, and we never could meet the demand. But that now created another outlet for me to. I thought I was exhausted when I had my cakes alone.
Yeah.
So it was just another outlet for me to just keep burning, endlessly. And I think it wasn't so much the work. In retrospect, what I realized happened was when I started the bakery, I sort of relegated more of my craft to the background, and I wore more of a CEO hat. And I was leading relatively large team, 200 employees. Yeah, I had a management team, but I needed to be on ground to be able to respond to all the many demands of that 24-hour business.
Yep.
And that meant that I did less of my creative work. And when I think about it now, that is what really burnt me out. The fact that I no longer had that outlet on a daily basis where I could just go into my bubble, whatever's happening, cover myself, throw everything away, ignore everything that's happening in my life, and just focus on the creativity, soak myself in just, when I'm making my cakes or I'm baking, it's just
Yep.
like, ugh, this, I need to be in flow. And when I'm in flow, I sort of am able to go through my processes of reflecting and being able to reframe things in a positive manner. That's where I do all my thinking, And then I was doing less of that and doing more of CEO, which was focused around speed, doing things quickly and meeting
Yeah.
targets and all of
Yeah.
that, quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, because I also had investors. I had foreign investment in the business. So it was like
Yeah.
high stakes. And that put a lot more pressure on me.
Gotcha. So it started off as something you loved, then it turned into something that you had to do, and then there was the pressure there, and it wasn't sustainable by the sounds of it, because it did lead to you burning out. But
Yeah.
it also, and the silver lining is, it sounded like it also taught you a lot about leadership, sustainability, and that has sent you on this path that I know you as a great teacher and speaker. So I'm really interested in, what in the kitchen was such a powerful teacher of leadership. So you kind of touched on it a bit there, but I'd like
Yeah.
to unpack it a bit more.
Well, it's so strange because it was never something that I could understand or pin down until I started to sort of unpack what happened to me after it happened. And I started asking those questions, how did you get here? What exactly brought you from that point A to point B? And I started to realize the times I thrived the most were the times that I was in my creative space. And then I started asking the questions of, what's the difference between the creative space and that fast moving place that requires you to wear your CEO hat? And I started realizing that while I was in my creative space, I I had to slow down. I forced slowed down my brain, my whole body, my being had to slow down to be able to sort of assimilate and push out the the creative work that I needed to do. Now, in my CEO leadership position, it was all speed. And then I realized that slowing down was a strategy. Slowing down was actually something that helped me to progress, where speed was something that continually depleted me. And that's how I started point by point. It was a very rigorous journey, trying to figure out what exactly happened. But I started realizing that in that process of slowing down, when I went into baking creative mode, I was actually doing what I now have put together as a framework that is reflect, resolve, and reconnect. And when I'm baking, or when anyone is baking, we can actually draw a line from that to the neuroscience that has shown that when you get into that space, you need to be using the part of your brain where you need to slow down. And that's the prefrontal cortex. That's where thinking happens. That's where clarity is formed. When you do everything else that is led by speed, you're actually working in your amygdala, which is where flight or freeze, rush, panic, anxiety. And while it can work for a time being, it's not sustainable. And so those were the lessons that I learned in that whole time. And I came up with this framework, understanding that speed doesn't really work long term. Speed can work when you start, but you need to learn how to pace yourself by slowing down. And if you look at it, the best example I ever give is, imagine that you're running a marathon, John.
Yep.
If you're running a marathon, it's a no-brainer. You know that as a strategy, you have to pace yourself. You can't go speed all through. There are times where you're going to say, you know what, I need to slow down because I need to catch my breath. I need to get some energy back so that I can go full throttle again. And it's the same principle. If you're running a business, you're leading teams, it's a marathon because it's nonstop. It just goes on. Even when you go home, you take it home with you. Your brain is still functioning in that capacity. You go to sleep all the time thinking about, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix that? So it's nonstop. And then just being able to slow down.
I think a lot of people. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, being able to slow down is what I found to be the strategy that is actually really sustainable.
Yeah, Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to what you're saying, especially the taking work home in your mind, really. And I love the curiosity aspect of how you were able to step back and look and see what was happening, and also the neuroscience part of it. So it's not necessarily just an experience you're sharing. It's actually backed by neuroscience as to what's sustainable
Correct.
and what's not. That's fascinating, Tosan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always say that stillness isn't where momentum dies. It's where wisdom begins. I mean, just think about it. If you're meditation, anything that requires wisdom actually requires you to stop and pause and slow down and just hold it.
I love that, because on the surface, if you look at slowing down, it's like, is this guy crazy? I've got so
Yeah.
much to do. How can I slow down? But then when you understand it the way you explain it, it does
Yeah.
make a lot of sense. I love that expression you just said about wisdom. Can you say that again for us so we
So
get it
basically,
twice?
what I say is that when stillness isn't where momentum dies, because people think, if I stay still, my momentum is just going to die. How can I slow down? How can I stop? So
Yeah,
stillness isn't where momentum dies. It's actually where wisdom begins.
I love
Because
it.
that little stint of pause, little stint of slowing down allows you to catch your breath again, hold space for yourself, and recalibrate in a way that you come out stronger.
Yep. For me, as I hear you saying that, it's a little bit like sometimes you feel like you shouldn't take a break and you just should keep going. But then when you find even if you take a 5 minute break, your actual next 30 minutes is more productive than had you not had that break.
Precisely. So I mean, what I try to teach, people that, I talk to is it is difficult, John. It is absolutely sometimes impossible for you to take long holidays. And even when you take the long holidays, you come back to work and in your first day, it's like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Where am I going to start from? And then, it's like everything's washed out. So what I do advocate for is just micro rituals, small doses. They might seem insignificant, but as a habit is formed of saying, you know what, John, you finished this meeting, you have another meeting in 20 minutes. Switch off your phone, shut your office door, and just make yourself a coffee, put your candle on, just listen to some music and just chill, just relax, switch off.
I love that.
Those little things,
Yeah.
just repeated over time, over your full day at work, helps
Yeah.
you, sort of hold space for yourself,
Yeah.
help you stay grounded, recalibrate when you move from one task to another and jump
Yep.
in and out of different tasks that you have to do the whole day. So that's what I actually advocate.
Nice, because that context switching can really be draining as well.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
like what you're saying about having those micro moments, so you can actually do fit it in. And I've shared this with the audience before, and I'll share it with you, Tosan. Whenever I make a coffee, because I stand there for, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds next to the coffee machine while it's
Yeah.
making it, I always practice gratitude in that moment, because I'm so grateful that I'm about to have a cup of coffee and that it's so easy for me to do. And there's so many things I can be grateful for
Yeah.
in that moment. So that's actually making a coffee is my micro gratitude time as well. So that's
Amazing.
what works for me.
Yeah. I mean, people don't really understand the power behind those little micros. You just think, it comes to nothing. There's no need. Don't bother about it. But, if you actually practice it, and you're repeatedly it comes to quite a significant amount of, you know, strength that you find in yourself and being able to just take control of things around you a lot better.
Yeah, yeah. And I can see a lot of your copies of your book behind
Yeah.
you. I'd love to know more about it because it's just launched. It's I know it's super exciting as a speaker to have your book, your physical copy of your book
Yeah.
done and
So,
available for people. So I really want to know. Yeah, hold it up. There it is for those watching on YouTube. You'll be able to see it. In the show notes, there'll be ways that you can order and get the book. But let's kick off straight away, Tosan, with how can people get it, and then we'll talk a bit more about it.
basically it's on Amazon. Just get onto
Great.
Amazon and,
It's on Amazon.
your
Fantastic.
team needs you. It's available there. Hard copy, paperback and ebook, both available there.
Fantastic. And I think on Amazon, they even give you a little section of the book you can have a bit of a read of to see
Yes.
if it's your style, which is great. And that's for free. So it's on Amazon and it's Your Team Needs You, but it's needs with a K, like you're baking and you're kneading the dough, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I need to.
The pun
let
is
people,
very, very well used there.
yeah, I like it. So what sounds like through your experiences that compelled you and was the catalyst for you writing the book.
Correct.
What was that process like? Because I imagine as you've got to almost stop and think and write and structure what you're going to say, that you've learned so much writing the book. But I'd love to know more about the book, about the process, what's in it. Share some gems with us, mate.
Okay, so the book for me was a very hard write because for the longest time I labeled my experience as a failure. I mean, this was me, high flyer, business thriving. Everyone looked at me as, highly successful. But inside, I felt like I was failing because I wasn't functioning the way that I knew I'd always functioned. I felt drained. I felt fatigued. I felt exhausted. I didn't know. I didn't have a label for it when all this was happening, but I just knew that I wasn't myself.
Yeah.
And I termed all of that. And to be honest, John, at some point, it's veered into depressive. And the symptoms are quite the same. Burnout, depression. They're not far from each other. So it was a very lonely journey because I was the successful one. My doors were open to people who came looking for help. I mentored, I spoke. So how was I going to come out to begin to tell anyone that, I was failing or I felt like I failed? It just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then there was an element of shame, that shrouded the whole. I'm like, I need to just hide myself. And because of how hard that whole journey was for me as a successful leader, I thought to myself, hang on a minute. I can't be the only one going through this. And at some point where I started to sort of ask questions and dig in a bit and ask people about it, I noticed that it wasn't my experience alone. People had different forms of the same syndrome where they felt overextended in their leadership positions. And worst of all, nobody taught them how to manage exhaustion as a leader. You were taught how to build capacity. You were taught how to be resilient. You were taught how to read your financials. You were taught how to improve your communication skills. You were taught everything else. But nobody ever said, hang on a minute, how are you going to manage Overload.
Rise and Thrivers, there's so much to take away from the first part of my conversation with Tosan. Success isn't just about how much we can produce, how quickly we can move, or how much responsibility we can carry. Sometimes the most productive thing we can do is create enough space to think. I love Tosan's line, stillness isn't where momentum dies, it's where wisdom begins. And his idea of small micro rituals is something that we can all experiment with. A few minutes in between meetings, making a coffee, switching off the phone, breathing, reflecting, and giving ourselves a chance to reset. In part 2, we go deeper into the human side of leadership. What happens when leaders keep performing while running on empty? And how we can lead in a way that doesn't burn ourselves out or our people out. And if this conversation has made you realize you could use a reset, you can get my Mindset Reset for Positive Change, the guided meditation, and my Next Brave Step worksheet for just $1 Australian. Go to johnmerkus.com/reset. Thanks for listening and for watching. And until next time, keep rising, keep thriving, and of course, stay awesome. Ciao for now.